What's up, y'all? Starting a tad early. To be completely honest with you. I hit the wrong button and started sooner than I was trying to start. So here we are. Just waiting for people to come in. Let's change the lights in the background here. And 5 seconds is the time we were really looking at. Let's get one more light going. It's a little dark in here. That's better. You know, it's been a minute. Let's start this show off with a freestyle. Now, when I say freestyle, what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to kick is a written verse. And then after I kick this written, all right, then I'm going to transition into freestyle. So let's start the show like that. Y'all ready? It's a track produced by DJ Cree 1, and I got a verse for it. Here we go. Yeah, can you hear me? Cree 1 on the track. Start off with a written and jump into a freestyle. For y'all, yeah. Pilgrims in the building, chillin' what we feelin'. A million children, gotta get his will in. Well done, well sung, welcome to the real kin. Killsin' the villain, no more concealing. I'm an alien, no cocoon for the healing. Just cross Christ on the Calvary healing. Tomb was sealed in, so they couldn't kill him. Blood like shielding, cover like pavilion. Bob like Dylan, mob like Sicilian. La Familia is a trillion real ones. Christ the Redeemer, not a Brazilian. Statue this verse true, gotta go, it's my curfew. Debut the true Drew go. I messed up right there. It's supposed to go like this. That one part, and then we'll transition to freestyle. And it goes like, ha. Debut the true Jew, guess who? Yo, it's Yesu. Bless you, won't hurt you or curse you, it's virtue. This is verse 2, freestyle. First the chorus. All my pilgrims, if you a pilgrim in the building, you in the building. Raise your hands up to the ceiling. Yeah, if you're feeling what I'm feeling. All my pilgrims, if you a pilgrim in the building, you in the building. Raise your hands up to the ceiling. Yeah. Are you feeling what I'm feeling? Check it out now. Freestyle verse 2. Tonight's one of those rare book reviews. Book review, it's coming after you. Last night out on the avenue at the car show, sharing the gospel. Some of the cats was kinda hostile. Got this gold, yes y'all. This news better than a fossil. Watch, but I forgot that I got to rock out on the block. The street was particularly called Grand. I saw a lot of dope Trans Ams and Grand Ans and some other cars. Yes, y'all, they was like stars, candy bars, cause they so sweet. I draw like zzz, zzz on the street, up and down. They was bouncing around. Here we come again with the brand new sound. Should we do it again? Maybe at the end of the show. This is the begin. So let's begin. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I feel we're a little close. Let's zoom out just a little bit here. I feel like it's a little bright too. Let's bring that down a notch a bit. I told the people earlier today when we had a Patreon hangout, I said, hey, I might go live later if I feel like it. It took me a little bit of time to get around the place where I felt like it. And so now here we are, you know, kind of later than we should be starting. But I want to do something, and so let's do it. Late night Sunday, it's October 17th, 2021. Midnight, if you're in the East Coast, I know how it goes. Oh, I still got that on the screen. Let me take that off. Okay. That's what I tried to hit. I tried to hit that button, and then I went to that other button, you know? So here we are, and we're going to actually do one of our book reviews. Now, since it's the last minute one, this is not one I expect you to follow along with, but I think we're behind in book reviews. So here it is, and here's why we're doing it. Number one is I've been reading it. Number two is this. There's not a lot of books by scholars in the academic field that discuss one West Israelism. Now, there's some that discuss Hebrew Israelism, no doubt. We've talked about those. They're in my bibliography at the back of my book, right, which you can get at the bookpatch.com or whatever, Amazon, of course, okay? So that's what's up with that. Oh, we don't want that like that. Let's do it like, I guess like that'll work. Okay. So here's the thing, though. There are a few that discuss one West Israelism, not just Black Israelism, not just Hebrew Israelism. This is a rare one that discusses one West Israelism. So I'm going to read it to you tonight because you know this is the Urban Apologetics channel. My name is Vocab Malone. I'm your host. We serve the underserved and look into the overlooked. And one of the specialties is one West style Hebrew Israelism. But that's not all we cover. We know that. But first, before we start that, I'm just going to read something to explain what kind of book this is. Do you see the top here? It says Ethnographic Encounters in Israel, Poetics and Ethics of Field Work. It's an edited volume by Fran Markowitz. It's on Indiana University Press. All right. And Fran is professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, Ben Gurion University of the Negev. All right. So that's who took care of the editing, but multiple authors have contributed, and one of them is on the cover image of tonight's program, John L. Jackson, and we're going to read an excerpt from his chapter. So what is ethnography? Let me share my screen here. We're going to learn a little bit of something new, and let's take a look here. This is from Princeton, and this is something that they would show to undergraduates, for example. Let me make it a little bigger so you can see it a little clearer. I think that should work, because here's what we're going to be talking about: ethnography. What is ethnography? Ethnography is a research method central to knowing the world from the standpoint of its social relations. It is a qualitative research method predicated on the diversity of culture at home, wherever that may be, and abroad. Ethnography involves hands-on, on-the-scene learning, and it is relevant wherever people are relevant. Ethnography is the primary method of social and cultural anthropology, but it is integral to the social sciences and humanities generally, and draws its methods from many quarters, including the natural sciences. For these reasons, ethnographic studies relate to many fields of study and many kinds of personal experience, including study abroad and community-based or international internships. Okay, I'm not going to read any more there. That's from Princeton, but I have a couple other places I will read from. One is actually go to Britannica. You know, I remember the old school when you actually had Encyclopedia Britannica. You know, like actual encyclopedias, and so I guess I have a soft spot for them. And here we are now on their website. I wonder if someone somewhere must buy encyclopedias still. I wonder if there's I wonder if when was the last time they published one, or they still publish them. Anyways, so here we are, Britannica.com. Ethnography, descriptive study of a particular human society or the process of making such a study. So I'm reading this there because it's a little more generally accessible, and it's not like it doesn't use kind of syllabus C language, you know. Contemporary ethnography is based almost entirely on fieldwork and requires the complete immersion of the anthropologist in the culture and everyday life of the people who are the subject of his study. There's been some confusion regarding the terms ethnography and ethnology. The latter, a term more widely used in Europe, encompasses the analytical and comparative study of cultures in general, which in American usage is the academic field known as cultural anthropology, and British usage, social anthropology. Increasingly, however, the distinction between the two is coming to be seen as existing more in theory than in fact. Ethnography, by virtue of its intersubjective nature. Okay, let's move this over here. Intersubjective nature is necessarily comparative. Given that the anthropologist in the field necessarily retains certain cultural biases, his observations and descriptions must, to a certain degree, be comparative. Thus, the formulating of generalizations about culture and the drawings of comparisons inevitably become components of ethnography. J. Rock just described. That reminds me. Listen, you need to hit the like button on this Facebook video. You need to share the link on social media to this Facebook video, please. And if you could do the same thing, if you're on Twitter, retweet it. If you're on YouTube, because this is broadcasting on our number 2 channel called Street Apologist. The address is youtube.com/Street Apologist. We'll be using that until the end of November. Please subscribe and all notifications for that. That is the channel you need to be aware of, okay? We're setting up little systems here, okay? And what we've got going on is I need to make sure that you guys subscribe and like and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to try to get this microphone out of my face so you guys can see. You know, it's like a blur. I think I'm going to be a little less clear, but let's just get it over here, okay? Out of the... yeah, I think that's better. What do you think? And here's this stupid little... I wonder if I could just put that behind. I wonder... Yeah. There we go. I like that better. A little more personality with that, okay? Okay. Beginning with the age of, which is nowhere to go. The discussion of other ways of life is an activity with roots in ancient times. Herodotus, the Greek traveler and historian of the 5th century BC, wrote of some 50 different peoples he encountered or heard of, remarking on their laws, social customs, religion, and appearance. Beginning with the age of exploration and continuing into the early 20th century, detailed accounts of non-European peoples were rendered by European traders, missionaries, and later colonial administrators. The reliability of such accounts varies considerably, as the Europeans often misunderstood what they saw or had a vested interest in portraying their subjects less than objectively. Okay, I'm not trying to read the whole entry, okay? Okay, we're not reading the whole entry there, but one more entry, which this is ScienceDirect.com, and what I liked is there was different things that they had listed in different sort of textbooks you could get. You see what I'm saying here? Research methods, I don't know. And they actually had one on field observations, research in anthropology and sociology. And look what it says here: the three discovery procedures. Listening is the first one, and you'll see why this is all relevant here in a second, okay? Hopefully you do, though. You're learning something new. You learn the term ethnography. I doubt most of us know that term prior to this, right? Ethnography's greatest strength is situated listening. Interviews become useful at later stages of fieldwork, but field observational research begins by listening to what British anthropologist Richards called speech in action. Here the actors control topicality, talking to each other about what they usually do, and the researcher secures access to their turf, the locations they usually occupy. Early on, as rapport begins to be established, fieldworkers deliberately place themselves in a wide sampling of such situations. Then, as the research funnel narrows and other methods are deployed, the ethnography becomes more selective about where to listen. The importance of situated listening was emphasized memorably by White. After he asked an intrusive question during illicit gambling activities and stopping the ongoing flow of behavior, White's key informant Doc told him, "Go easy on that who, what, why, when, where stuff, Bill. You ask those questions and people will clam up on you. If people accept you, you can just hang around and you'll learn the answers in the long run without even having to ask the questions." I found that this was true. As I sat and listened, I learned the answers to questions that I would not even have had the sense to ask if I had been getting my information solely on an interview basis. Situated listening becomes the basis for understanding both what can be talked about in later conversations and interviews and what categories and evaluations the actors use to observe and interpret ongoing behavior. Now, I think that's very helpful. What we just looked at there, okay? Now, later on, I'm going to go look at the author of this book right now. But first, I just want to show you the book we're going to be taking a look at here, okay? That, I guess we'll do it on, let's see here. All right, there we go. So here's the book we're going to be taking a look at. So this is the Street Apologist book review we're doing, where I'm going to show you some excerpts. The ebook's not bad price. Paperback's not a bad price, which we're going to be looking at here. The hardcover, that's a little costly. That's a little costly. Now let's read here. Well, what did they do that for? Oh, the praise. Who gave it praise? I'm curious here. Actually, I haven't read this part of it. Oh, yeah, right. Kind of cool. I don't know. That's not very interesting. But here's Nate to D2 just put a tip in the tip jar. Well, thank you, brother. So check this out. I forgot to mention, thanks for reminding me there, Nate. You can tip. Okay, and the way you do it is see this white thing at the top in the blue where it says Streamlabs link. You go to streamlabs.com/vocab/tip. I know we've got to take an extra step. It's not quite the super chat situation, but nonetheless, it can work out, and Nate did it, and if he did it, you can do it too. So come on and join along in the fun, man, and tip up if you believe in what we're doing. Also, there's a Logos discount code for you to use. That helps us and helps you. And become a Patreon supporter is another option. See that in pink and yellow down there. Or PayPal, that's direct. People do that from time to time. I try to remember to thank them. Sometimes it takes me a while. Sometimes I don't, but I see everyone and I appreciate it. And then there's a Cash App. Same thing with that. There's a Street Apologist. So there's multiple ways to help support. So shout out to everybody in the live chat. Don't worry, I'll get to y'all. So let's look here at well, we're not going to read about the main author, but we will look here at the TOC, Table of Contents. See, part 1, we're going to be looking at Chapter 3 in part 1. It's called Confrontations and Conversions. Number 3, Doing Demona, an Americanist anthropologist in an Africanized Israel. John L. Jackson Jr. And you see the rest of them. Pretty interesting stuff, right? You see, very interesting stuff, right? But here's the thing. We're only going to be reading the end of Chapter 3 because we're not going to be doing much on Demona. If you've been following this channel for a while, you know about Demona Israel. Ben Ami was a spiritual leader for a long time. He influenced Whitney Houston until he died. There's maybe 5,000 of those folks. The numbers are sketchy. They're currently in the news because Israel's trying to deport some of them. There's causing a controversy there. And so he talks about this group called the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, right? Left the south side of Chicago in the 60s, ended up in Demona, right? Well, at the end of the chapter, something very interesting pops up, and that's what we're going to be getting into. Because you notice the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem are certainly a black Israelite group, but they're not a One West group. But a One West group does appear in John L. Jackson's chapter. Okay, so now you've seen enough of that. Let's flip back over. There we go. Okay. I'm ready to read this book to you. Before I do it, let me give a shout out to the folks who are here that I see off the top. Shout out to Oswaldo. How you doing? Shout out to Eduardo. How you doing? Shout out to D-New. Yeah, I know Chris Duke, but shout out to you too, baby. What's up, Nate? What's up, Alejandro? What's up, Justin Lee? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Well, thank you very much, Eduardo. I appreciate that. He is supporting, and every time you do that, you get the transforming thing with the bumblebee, and we'll put that down here, okay? You can get the tip jar alert information down there. Shout out to JP Davis, who I got to meet personally. The squad got to meet. We did our hangout earlier today. Good brother right there. Shout out to Rob Ski, my brother from Columbus. And who else we got? We had some other, I'm sorry if I'm missing. Hey, what's up, my man Brandon? How you doing? Shout out to Michael. What's going on, Michael B? Mr. Green, yeah, we forgive you for missing, but sort of, whatever. And there's Floyd. Hey, can you guys tell Floyd that we are uploading? It's just on Facebook. And hi, Brenda Todd, how are you doing? So we are uploading, Floyd, but we are mainly uploading on Facebook. Now, I just started using the Street Apologist channel as a new thing. So the audience is a little bit split up tonight. It'll be like this till December. And then we got Thamazo. Hey, how you doing? Okay, so I know it's late. Let Uncle Vocab read to you. Ethnographic Encounters in Israel, Poetics and Ethics of Fieldwork. So I'm going to turn now to page 67. Print's a little small here. That's all right. And chapter 3 begins on page 59. But now, let's read this. Again, why am I doing this? I like to have us keep track of what secular academia says about some of the things we cover as Christian apologists, right? We may not always agree with her conclusions, but we need to be aware if we're going to be on the cutting edge of apologetics about what secular academia has to say about these subjects, okay? And so this is just a little bit of doing that. This is not like a hardcore academic book per se, but it's academics writing this. And you can tell already, you know, Ethnographic Encounters in Israel, that's not a title designed to sell a lot. That's sort of an academic title. Now, this is a rare glimpse into a direct discussion about a One West group. Ready? Here we go. It's so funny how this begins. Don't be a sucker. Hold on, let's do it like this. Don't be a sucker. He shouted from a dimly lit corner of the subway car. His unexpected eruption sounded ferocious to my ears. Raw, piercing, cold. But maybe that's just because the words had been aimed directly at me. It was my first year in graduate school, and I was commuting from my mother's East New York apartment about an hour away. I majored in filmmaking as an undergraduate, which made entering that doctoral program a crash course in all the many social science theories and theorists I didn't need to master while I was producing 8mm shorts in the streets that surrounded and sliced through Howard University's campus. During those post-baccalaureate, I always have trouble with those words. Baccalaureate, I'm probably saying it wrong because I always have trouble with that word. Actually pronouncing it. Post-baccalaureate train rides back and forth to Manhattan, I felt like I was cramming to catch up, drowning myself in dense prose from scholars I've never heard of. Even the names I recognized, like Marx and Freud, I didn't really know. I hadn't actually read them, not at length, which is why I distractedly missed more than a few subway station stops, wrestling sentences that refused to relinquish even a shred of meaningfulness without a fight. So he's talking about reading on the subway train in New York, which could be a little tricky, and sometimes he missed some stops. And he's talking about one of these experiences, and he's in a subway car. I would imagine this would be in the 90s or early 2000s. We had to see when he was in his first year of graduate school, based upon when he graduated from Howard, which is a HBCU. And the first thing he hears is, "Don't be a sucker." So listen to this. Hey, what's up, Ham Sunshine? So when those 4 or 5 high school students sprinted by me during one evening's train ride, knocking whatever book I was reading out of my hands and onto the floor, I didn't worry about it. I was so absorbed in what I was half comprehending that I must not have realized just how much actual space I'd been taking up, probably more than any reasonable strap-hanger jogging through the middle of a mostly empty subway train might have anticipated. I didn't even take it personally when those same teenagers sat down at the far end of that subway car, glancing back at me without so much as a half-hearted sorry or excuse me for my troubles, laughing uncontrollably. So he's talking about teenagers on the subway in New York, all right? Some of you have had that experience. I've had that experience. It was actually pleasant because I was with the A-team, all right? All right, here we go. With one another about something they clearly found hilarious. I just buried my head back in the book as soon as I retrieved it. That's when I heard the aforementioned admonishment. Don't be a sucker all your life. A few more train stops came and went without much else happening. At least nothing I can recall now. Several more passengers got on and off our subway car, sharing the screeching subterranean space between and around us. At some point, those very teens exited the subway car too. Eventually, the stranger who had chosen to chastise me earlier, this is kind of funny, I like the way he writes this. Listen to this. I like listening to people write too, it inspires me to write, and he's a good writer. This is funny what he says here. Eventually, the stranger who had chosen to chastise me earlier about the perils of suckerdom from the far corner of the train, a guy who looked to be in his late 20s or early 30s, rose from his corner seat and headed toward me. "Just in case you want to extend your mind," he said, leaning over and gesturing toward my reading material. His goateed face about a foot from my forehead, a Star of David swinging from his neck. "You don't gotta be soft, man. You don't need to slice nobody up or nothing, but you don't need to be no punk neither." He then handed me a wrinkled flyer designed by The Israelite Church of Universal Practical Knowledge, ICUPK. Now, originally this school, everybody, is me talking, not reading for a second, it's important. This school at 1 West 125th Street, right? It started in 1969. It was described as a school at first. But it appears once they realized that it was easier to get tax-exempt status, 501c3, if you had church in there, changed it to church. Put church in the title of their group. So if you see descriptions about the 1 West School when it was sort of in its final throes of its heyday, this is right before it split up into multiple parts, it was called at that time the ICUPK. Later on, right, is when we had the situation where the ISUPK took the earlier name that was not apparently copyrighted or trademarked, and they did that. Okay, I see people saying they want to be mods. Well, I guess I don't have any. You're going to need to give me a second here, everyone. I'm going to try to do this. So take a pause from the reading, and let's do that. Let's get some mods here. By the way, everyone who's on the Street Apologist channel, please go ahead and like this video. Okay, D New. Let's see. There you go. Nate is already 1. D New is 1. Now tell me what powers or whatever you guys have. For now, I think it's fine just to have 2. You know, could somebody drop the link, perhaps, for the tip jar, and I'll pin it up there? Okay. All right, here we go. All right. All right. He then handed me a wrinkled flyer designed by the Israelite Church of Universal Practical Knowledge, ICUPK, a particularly infamous Hebrew Israelite organization in New York City. My road to Israel began in that train car. Interesting. This guy ends up studying the group in Dimona because of an encounter with an ICUPK member. So this had to be prior to 99. Well, it could have been still in 99. The school was existence. I'm trying to think, when did ICUPK change its name to ICGJC? It could have been in the early 2000s, but mid to late 90s, early 2000s. So we have about a decade that this could have happened. But isn't it interesting? And now this is a scholar, right? My road to Israel began in that train car. The ICUPK is generally considered an extremist organization. Now, he puts that in quotes. Just in case somebody's wondering, John L. Jackson, because someone's going to ask at some point, the author is black, someone that the 1 Westers would call a Jake or an Israelite who doesn't know his heritage, okay? And just that's important, I guess, for some people to hear. The ICUPK is generally considered an extremist organization, an anti-white hate group, and although they share some basic tenets with the AHIJ, that's African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, the points of divergence between those two brands of black Hebrewism. Now notice that. I'm going to stop there again. Jacob Dorman, he refers to this set of beliefs that encompasses many groups. He calls it Black Israelism. John L. Jackson, the other main scholar besides Dorman who deals with this stuff, he calls it Black Hebrewism. It's important. Both of them have a common word in there, but they don't have the same agreement on the last part of it. So there's not a consensus about what academic term to use yet. Is it going to be Black Hebrewism or Black Israelism? But that's what the scholars are going with that I've seen so far, okay? We in the apologetic community usually will say Hebrew Israelism, okay? So again, what I expect out of the audience is, yes, I hope to help them a little bit, but I also hope that they come along for the ride. study and learn this stuff, become miniature experts themselves. Otherwise, it's just one guy talking. Thank you, Nate. I pinned that, by the way. Okay, so continuing on, don't want to get too distracted as I discuss things. This would the points of divergence between those two brands of Black Hebrewism are equally enlightening. This would be my first up-close and personal introduction to the group, starting me on my decade-long search for more information about varied Africana commitments to Hebrewism. So that's academic speak for the set of ideas he describes there. I'm actually not sure how seriously my flyer dispensing critic took his association with the ICUPK. Seriously enough to proselytize on a late-night IRT train, but I never did see him again, not even when I started to attend some of ICUPK's nightly classes on 125th Street in Harlem not too long thereafter. Still, I can picture this brief exchange in a New York City subway car and what feels like mnemonic technicolor. I never interviewed him, and I can't remember anything more of what he told me, but my anthropological journey along the routes of this project started with that brief confrontation on a Brooklyn-bound subway train with a bit of unsolicited advice and a pocket-wrinkled handout. At the very least, that's the moment I retroactively conjure as imaginary in my own internal narratives about how my interest in Black Hebrewism began. So you're reading a scholar. Now, this is not even traditional scholar work, because you notice it's very sort of subjective the way he's writing. This is like a certain form of ethnography, and that's why we read the definition at the beginning. I'm not saying he's not scholarly. I'm saying you understand what he's reading. This isn't one of his like academic articles. It's a certain kind of chapter in a certain kind of book, okay? So here we go. And shout out to everybody who's given in the tip jar so far, or become Patreons and all that stuff. Shout out to y'all. Okay. Continue on. That ICUPK flyer had one simple drawing, an outline of the African continent with a circle around it and a thick diagonal line slashed right through its middle, mimicking the look of a no smoking sign. Did you catch that? The flyer he gets by a One West Hebrew Israelite on the subway car. On the front of it, what's it have? Crossed out the continent of Africa. If you wonder why IUIC and all these groups seem so anti-African, almost like they hate Africans, it's because they are. Michael B. says, Dr. James White coined the term Hebrew Israelism. Now, in my book, Michael B., I say that's the first time I heard that exact phrase used. So you might have heard it from there. Hey, Brenda, thank you for the tip jar. Again, we don't have super chats on this channel right now, especially on Facebook. They don't have anything like that. But the tip jar really helps. I know there's one little extra step, but it really helps. It really helps. It really helps. That's all I can say. I'm going to keep on doing this, but Lord knows we need support. You guys know what I'm talking about. So I say that's the first time I heard it. I don't go the step and say he coined the phrase, because I don't know that for sure. You see what I'm saying? Because we've already got Dorman using Black Israelism. Somebody could have used some variation of Hebrew Israelism prior to that. I don't know. So I just say it's the first time I heard it. It was from him. That's the first time I heard someone use the term. Continuing on here. Okay. So I like how he's kind of discussing when he gets into this, because in my little book, you know, I talk about when I first got into this. I kind of have a similar thing as far as that experience, you know, that I recount. That ICUPK flyer had one simple drawing, an outline of the African continent with a circle around it and a thick diagonal line slashed right through its middle, mimicking the look of a no smoking sign. The text read in all caps, "You are not African." So I don't know if I finished the thought, but if you wonder why there's anti-Africanism in the One West groups, is because the founding of the One West groups at 1 West 125th Street had anti-African sentiments in it from day one. There was also a listing for the time and channel of the ICUPK's weekly public access television shows and references to several scriptures from the King James Version of the Bible. It was my first short lesson in one prominent claim of this particular Hebrew Israelite community, their contention about Africa's absolute difference, about the continent's irrelevance to their political and spiritual project. Thank you, Mr. Green. Man, you guys are killing it tonight. What's happened? Do I need to go late all the time? Just kidding. Seriously, this is feeling like the old days. You know what? I'm going to do another freestyle after I finish reading this, just for y'all. There might have been a backside to the flyer with even more information. Thank you, Dinu. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone. There might have even been a backside to the flyer with even more information. I haven't seen it in years and can't recall. So unfortunately, it seems that Jackson, Dr. Jackson, he has a PhD now, and all that, so I'll call him that retroactively. You know what I'm saying, how that works. He doesn't still have this flyer, but I would love to talk to him one day. I respect his work greatly, and I like how he's had personal encounters, so it's not just bookish for him, and I would love to see what he has. I bet he has a nice little personal collection, though, nonetheless. Because he used to attend the school to do essentially ethnographic research. So I'd love to hear about that. I wonder if any old One Westers know this man. But continuing on here. I just remember thinking that such an idea was so wildly provocative. African Americans are really not descendants of Africans? Are not from Africa at all? That's a hard history to hawk in most black neighborhoods, and it felt ironic coming from a group infamous for a certain racialized swagger that seemed indebted to black nationalist forebears who had an unequivocal investment in the historical, mythological, genealogical, and symbolic centrality of Africa. That is a mouthful, and it's exactly right, except somehow they've made it easier now to hawk this in the neighborhoods. Right? Not too long after that train ride, I started to think about conducting a bit of ethnographic research on the ICUPK, a group that had a lot to say about the AHIJ's exploits in Israel. Thank you, James Zen, for the tip and the tip jar. Everyone apparently is seeing it in the Facebook group and in the YouTube group and Streamlabs link to the top, and you guys are coming through. And like I said, we got a freestyle coming. At least one. I got some beats I'll bring up at the end of this. So he's saying ICUPK had a lot to say about AHIJ. Quote, and not much of it very positive. I can't remember hearing about Ben Ami, Israel, and the Kingdom of Yah before some ICUPK members brought them up, somewhat in passing, only to dismiss their immigrationist moves as delusional, their relocation to Israel useless and misguided, the myth-making of a false prophet and his blinded sheep. So this is how he is summarizing the ICUPK's feelings towards AHIJ. Interesting. It wasn't all that surprising to hear that the ICUPK community was hostile to another group's assertions about history and cosmological truth. The ICUPK is probably best known for such pointed dismissiveness, for confronting passers-by with bullhorns and megaphones on crowded city sidewalks across urban America, challenging the legitimacy of all other faiths and ideologies, Christianity, Islam, Afrocentrism, alternative black Hebrew Israelisms, and just about anything else that runs counter to their own complex idiosyncratic beliefs. Again, perfect description. He knows what he's talking about. You see this? You see this? You see this? Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So this is why I like reading. This book is rare. Rare. This book is rare, going into somewhat depth about One West Hebrew Israelism. You just don't have that many academics who talk about it because most of them don't know. Jackson knows. All right, continuing on here. Even before I began a more, well, thank you, Brother Polemic. You guys are killing it. What is going, did I do something? Is there like a secret meeting you guys had? Someone knows something. Something's happened. I don't know what's going on, but shout out to y'all, okay? I never thought it was happening on a book review where you guys would come alive again. Oh, Floyd is locked down in Melbourne, Australia. Yes, we do need to keep you in prayer, Brother Floyd, and also thank you for buying the book. I appreciate that. Man, I mean, Australia's starting to look like the world's largest prison, man, and I'm not joking. That it is not good. It is not a good thing. So we definitely got your back, man, and it's no joke, man. I'm just glad you're able to be with us, okay? Even before I began a more formal examination of the ICUPK, I witnessed quite a few of their public debates with black pedestrians from other spiritual communities, interracial and homosexual couples, Orthodox rabbis, baited foreigners, and anyone else willing to verbally spar with them. Such curbside soapboxing has long been de rigueur for a dynamic black public sphere, and the ICUPK is following in a documented tradition when they take their message straight to the streets. That message, thank you, Oswaldo, man. Thank you, brother Oswaldo, for the tip in the tip jar. Wow, I don't know what's going on, but I'm impressed. Okay. Wow, okay. You guys are distracting me. That message, and much of the style with which they disseminate it, demonstrates some of the shared institutional history tying the ICUPK and the AHIJ. The two groups agree on a few very key points and share some fundamental positions. But one thing stands out as the policed borders between their beliefs. They have dramatically opposed takes on the place of Africa in their revisionist thinking. The ICUPK starts with a premise about the Middle Passage that isn't all that dissimilar from the one that grounds the AHIJ's historical revisionism. Notice that this is what I've said too, that it's historical revisionism. So this is not something Vocab came to use as a slur. This is something that any scholar who studies these groups recognizes. They are historical revisionists of, really, to be honest, some of the, not the worst, because there's groups that are worse, but of the worst variety, of the worst sort, because it's so massive and so ugly. I would say the white supremacist groups, that's why I want to make sure people know they're worse. They, from what I would know, they would take the cake. Okay, a reading of the transatlantic slave trade that is fairly cut and dried. African pagans and Arab Muslims sold Hebrew Israelites into European slavery. Anything else, the ICUPK argue, is a lie, a conspiratorial rewriting of history. That's the pot, right? The rest of the ICUPK's arguments about the, quote, lost tribes, about the Bible's true meaning, about figures like Socrates and Shakespeare actually being black. So see, he knows that they argue for that. One West argues that Socrates and Shakespeare are black. Stem from that central interpretation of the transatlantic slave trade, and they are unflinching in their commitment to its paradigmatic importance. Again, great. He's nailing it. This is precise and accurate. I used to show some of my undergraduate and graduate classes excerpts from VHS tapes of the ICUPK's confrontational street exchanges about Africa and Africans. I would love to see those. I wonder if he still has those. Much of it's footage that ICUPK members recorded themselves, renditions of their no-nonsense truth-telling about all things misconstrued as sacred and holy by misled African Americans. That entails more than just challenging the hallowed status of Africa-centered black political philosophies. It also requires denouncing the skin-whitening and toga dressing of iconic Jesus Christ imagery, exposing the demonic nature of the Catholic Church, dismissing rabbinical Judaism as a complete sham, and brutally castigating black people for complicity in their own miseducation, for being duped by self-evidently erroneous rewritings of history. In that sense, my introduction to the ICUPK on that number 3 subway train was exactly right in terms of the group's general evangelizing mode. Confrontational, accusatory, and no-holds-barred personal attacks meant to startle sleepwalkers from their open-eyed slumber. Stop being such suckers. Again, perfect. He is perfectly describing this. And what's interesting is a scholar who is writing about this, not just from some ivory tower, but from personal experience, and then comparing it to other things, and then putting it into words and taking this to the academy. I'd love to hear some of the conversations that he has, in other contexts. It's perfectly describing what they do, how they do it, right? it's someone who's watching on the YouTube channel. I'm not sure. What are we saying here? What are we saying here? I'm not sure what we're saying here. Let's see if I can. I don't know what we're saying here. Okay, well, whatever. Let me see here. Let me see if I can fix this. I'm trying to see what is being said on the YouTube channel. I think, okay. But notice how he describes it perfectly, right? And, they'll say, oh, Vocab's trying to do this or do that or label this way or label this that way. An objective observer would say the same kind of things. I mean, look right here, right? I mean, what a perfect description of how they do things, right? But you can't say anything back. You can't question them. You can't be even friendly confrontational. You definitely can't be aggressive back in any way, right? Hey, shout out to a former Hebrew Israelite in the live chat, Georges, Abella, Ruapain. I don't even know if I even pronounce your name right, brother, but I got love for you, man. Continuing on, black people have woolly hair. The ICUPK street preacher makes clear after another member reads a description of, quote, of the Most High from the book of Daniel, a passage about how, quote, the Ancient of Days did sit with hair like pure wool, end quote. Many of the ICUPK street teachings emphasize the body's physical features as signs of celestial chosenness. The impostor Jews of Revelations don't have woolly hair, they argue, and the so-called white man, the devilish so-called white man, is so-called because the ICUPKers consider Europeans red, not white. They are Edomites, the supposedly jealous and leprous descendants. Thank you, Captain Confusion of Face. Wow, I wish I had time to tell the story about that. I really do, but thank you for the tip in the tip jar, Captain Confusion of Face. They are Edomites, the supposedly jealous and leprous descendants of Israel's usurped older brother, the ruddy Esau. This interpretation of the Jacob and Esau story, the notion that whites were cursed with leprosy, acts as a counterweight to the curse of Ham, which maintains that blacks were damned by God with dark skin and slave status, mirroring the kinds of counterclaiming that has long animated Afro-diasporic responses to social marginalization and demonization. He's simply saying this is another example of the pendulum swinging, as the pendulum was over here, swings this way. Several scholars have written histories, some quite detailed, about black Jewish/Hebrew groups in America, and many of them start off with the 19th century founding of the Church of the Living God, the pillar ground of truth for all nations in Tennessee by F.S. Cherry. Cherry allegedly preached that white people were intrinsically evil and predicted Armageddon with the return of Jesus Christ at the end of the 20th century. So notice, it's recorded that one of the founders of Hebrew Israelism, F.S. Cherry, taught the year 2000 prophecy. Ariah did the same thing, right? Isn't that fascinating? A prophecy that the ICUPK also espoused during the run-up to the end of the millennium, landing them and other black Israelite groups tainted by association on the FBI's terrorism watch list. William Crowdy founded the Church of God and Saints of Christ group in Lawrence, Kansas, a few years after Cherry's group began, and was adamant about African Americans being descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. So I hear conflicting reports about who's first, Cherry or Crowdy. And for now, the information I have is Crowdy, but they're so close it's hard to tell exactly. He's putting Cherry a little bit before Crowdy, which some people do as well. I'm still just working through all this, right? His group, after several permutations and reconfigurations, continues its work throughout the Americas and other parts of the world, including Africa, with William Crowdy's great-grandson now at the helm. Most historians operate under the working assuming, I think it's supposed to say working assumption there. Hey, Floyd's criticizing me for typos. Look, even in the academic book, they got it, because here it says working assuming, but I know it's supposed to be working assumption. That Cherry, Crowdy, and other earlier black Jewish pioneers mixed together everything from Christianity to Freemasonry. And by the way, that's documented as they literalize an erstwhile metaphorical identification with ancient Israelites. Again, this is something I've said. I didn't get it from this book, but it's something I noted, and it's something that you realize other people have been saying. As they literalize an erstwhile metaphorical identification with ancient Israelites, an identification that European missionaries cultivated in their African slaves. The sister Nefertiti has discussed some of this, as well as Faithful to God. Again, these critics see the usage of terms like saint among the AHIJ as linguistic holdovers from its members' earlier Christian identities. Because AHIJ is mainly, right? What are they? They are mainly Old Testament, and yet they call each other saints, all right? In Harlem, New York, the Commandment Keepers, founded by Wentworth Matthew in the early 20th century, drew from white Jewish traditions and black separatist ones in their forging of a distinctive black Jewish sensibility. Remember, One West came out of the Commandment Keepers in 1969, approximately, all right? As that meticulous exhibit guide hammered home during our 2005 museum tour, Rabbi Josiah Ford, Marcus Garvey's one-time confidant and musical director of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, that's Garvey's group, UNIA, helped to bring Matthew to Judaism, which he also tried to accomplish unsuccessfully with Garvey. Garvey was a Christian. And Matthew's Commandment Keepers looked to the much-discussed Ethiopian Jews, Beta Israel, for inspiration and ancestral legitimacy. All the early black Israelites did. No, that's all good. I was just making a funny comment back, Floyd. That's all. All right. Now here where it gets into our One Wester friends. Even before Matthew died in the 1970s, the community was already beginning to form factions and offshoots, one of which was founded by Eber ben Yomin, or Yam Yam, also known as Abba Bivens, and would become known as the Israelite School. Later, it was renamed the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge by the person who took over that group upon Bivens' death, the same individual who helped to develop their particular version of the Hebrew language, meant to distinguish it from more supposedly Yiddish-contaminated varieties. Well, who is that person? Wouldn't that be Ariyah? It's interesting he doesn't mention him by name. He just says that person. It seems like that would be Ariyah, from my understanding. All right. According to historian Jacob Dorman, and Dorman and Jackson, I think, are the two most knowledgeable, well-rounded people on this. Hey, shout out to Jonathan Salazar. How you doing? All right. And shout out to everybody else that I forgot. Sorry if I forgot you. All right. Matthew's version of Black Judaism was always a bit duplicitous, consisting of a public face and a set of sometimes quite divergent private actions. Sounds familiar. A tension that greased the wheel for the departure of Bivens. This was not necessarily because he was taking the Commandment Keepers in a completely new direction, but because he was simply going public with some of its more hidden transcripts. Depending on who tells the next part of the story, the Israelite school then changed its designation from a school to a church in the 1980s to make a case, the argument goes, for tax-exempt status. And even more splintering occurred when several members of the community, among them a clique of priests called the Seven. This is this is a scholar who knows a little bit about the seven heads. Now, he doesn't call them the seven heads. He calls them the seven. But that's crazy. This rare, unique, off-the-wall stuff that we're bringing out to you and talking about and studying, there actually is a scholar who knows something about it. Because you hardly ever get people talking about One Westism like he is. You guys see that? Fascinating. Decided that they didn't agree, although here's the thing. His timelines, let me just give you. Decided that they didn't agree with certain proposed changes in approach and philosophy that emerged as the derivative group continued to evolve. Disputes over doctrinal changes happen all the time. In one dramatic example, the ICUPK changed its fundamental position on group membership in the late 1990s. He's saying they changed who could actually be in the ICUPK. Listen to what he says. At first, they used patrilineal descent to decide who would join their ranks. That means who's your father. You could only be a real Hebrew Israelite and a member of the ICUPK if your father and your father's father were black. However, they eventually settled on a more nebulous and open-ended way of deciding such things, declaring that God explicitly forbade genealogical gatekeeping and arguing that the mysterious workings of the Holy Ghost alone best determine who belongs, regardless of the lineage or skin color of any prospective member. What he's talking about there is how, and he's not, I'm not sure if I could say he's describing it exactly right. It's a little ambiguous here. But what he seems to be talking about here is going from, hey, we know, this person, to, well, it appears their father's white, it appears their grandfather's white, but they're with the teaching. So that must indicate that their father actually is an Israelite despite the appearance of how he looks. So everyone should understand for like GMS, for example, they're the one group that explicitly still upholds this kind of nebulous Holy Spirit type of thing that he's saying, although they define that weird. It's not that they're saying they're letting in Edomites. It's not that they're saying they're letting in Gentiles. They're saying they're letting in Israelites who look like Gentiles. You see what I'm saying? So you got to understand, that's the way they would be looking at it. Now, GOCC is different. They actually changed it. They actually have members who they would describe as Gentiles, that they're allowed to be grafted in. And they're a one less spinoff. Okay, continuing on here. At about that same time, an ICUPK devotee decided to start another competing group, arguably in response to such drastic changes in basic assumptions about how to decide membership, the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ, ICGJC. The leader would call himself Comforter. This dude is talking about Tazadakia. That's crazy. You got an academic book with someone talking about Tazadakia. The guy who died from COVID, but before he died claimed to be essentially the manifestation of the Holy Spirit. That's why he called himself the Comforter. And Ariel called him the God-sent Comforter at a public meeting of the ICGJC. Isn't that wild? The leader would call himself Comforter and rail against the wrong-headed ideas of his former allies. And there are many more offshoots and former allies besides these. The House of David, that was sort of the in-between group. That now is mainly a bunch of old men that Nate went with Mashah to, and Tahar went with Mashatu, and they eventually came out of that. So it was like a holding time before they left to be on their own almost. The House of Israel, HOI is still around. They're the ones responsible for helping that dude get beat up in L.A. recently. They're the ones who protested at the 9/11 memorial recently. The 12 tribes, and on and on. Still today, the Black Hebrew Israelite community continues to fissure, much as all groups do. The dividing line between Shia and Sunni Islam, or the ever-increasing denominations of Christianity, speak to similar fracturing dynamics. As different as some of their specific claims might be, just about all of these varied Black Israelite groups agree with the AHIJ that the Hebrew Israelites were relatively new arrivals to Central and West Africa when the transatlantic slave trade began, relative outsiders captured for delivery to European slavers. But whereas the AHIJ would still imagine Africa as germane to its transformational and transnational project, the ICUPK, the ICGJC, and most of the others do not. To them, Africans are evil and irredeemable. Oh, look, Esau donated $1. Wait, what's it say? What's that say down there? Let me make that. Oh, it wasn't big enough. I couldn't see the text there. Okay. There's only this is the second to last page, by the way. Okay. So as far as the book goes, we're almost done. I enjoy this. I hope you guys do too. Okay. Okay. To them, Africans are evil and irredeemable. They are different peoples, Everyone might be a child of Abraham, but only certain children, even among all of those lumped together as members of the same racial group, are Hebrew Israelites, descendants of Jacob. The others are Hamites, Hagarenes, Cushites, and Ishmaelites, but not Israelites. And that difference is paramount. According to the ICUPK and the ICGJC, the Middle Passage produced a diasporic community, but not an African diasporic community. The ICUPK's notion of diaspora includes communities throughout the New World, former slave populations, and indigenous ones, but continental Africans are categorically excluded from the fold. To the ICUPK, being a Hebrew Israelite means you are decidedly not a Jew, but at the very same time, you are not African either, and he puts that in all caps. Forever in it, but not of it. The ICUPK proffer a version of the Israelite identity predicated on a sense of history that begins in Eden, continues through the ministry of Yeshua, although they don't call him that, of course, and then reemerges after a period of African captivity amongst foreign nations on the shores of the New World after the transatlantic slave trade. The AHIJ, of course, doesn't denounce Africa. They reclaim it, a move reinforced by the fact that they have even renamed themselves the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, which wasn't their official moniker when they first arrived in 1969. Isn't it interesting that they also arrived in Israel, the AHIJ, in 1969 when One West began. Since the AHIJ consider Israel a part of Africa, iconic pictures of the continent found throughout the Kfar include a strip on the upper right corner, an iconic rendering of the landmass that cuts across the Suez Canal. Africans might have sold Hebrew Israelites into slavery, but the AHIJ haven't written off the entire continent, especially with Hebrew Israelites still potentially scattered among the African populations. Ethiopian Jews, the Limba, the Yoruba, the Ashanti, the Igbo. The ICUPK excludes Africa, refuting its symbolic and historical significance. The AHIJ expands Africa, adding the Arabian Peninsula and dismissing the Suez Canal as an African land grab predating the Berlin Conference. And for both groups, and there would be ethnographers such as Jackson here, such decisions have implications for the kind of Israel that is produced and experienced. The ICUPK claim to know where all of the lost tribes are located, sprinkled throughout the Americas. To this very day, some street corners in Brooklyn are periodically draped with placards listing their precise location whenever the ICUPK set up for their megaphone Bible readings. The AHIJ don't boast nearly as definitive a mapping of how the Old World tribes fit into New World nation states, but they consider themselves the tribe of Judah, if only because the scriptures make clear which tribe would return to Israel first, laying the groundwork for others to follow and finally establishing the kingdom of Yah on earth. And that's what I say. Even the groups that don't really use the 12 tribes chart, most of them still think, hey, yeah, but we know, but we're of Judah. You know, so that's usually what they say. Vocab, I've always wondered, did House of David disband after Mashah's passing? There is still there's still a House of David to this day. So they had more splits after Mashah died, is my understanding. But Michael, there's still a group, I believe. Let me try to find them right now on YouTube, since you're asking. Let's see if I can find them. They actually have some interesting videos on their channel. Yeah, I believe here's what you need to put here. All right, there you go. You know what? Let me just share this screen since I just brought it up. I'm going to show you. I'm going to answer the question right now. I'm going to read still. But you see, Michael asked Vocab, I've always wondered, did House of David disband after Mashah's passing? So let's look at that right now, my friend. All right. Let's see. Actually, let me make this a little more clear for you. So I'm going to bring this down. Oh, it's not cooperating, is it? Oh, I know how to do it. What if I do this? I'm trying to make you be able to see this picture. Well, you can see some of the picture. You can see most of the gentlemen here, but it gets smaller. But see, that is HODC today, the House of David camp. You see there? You're right on their YouTube channel. I said it's mainly a number of older men. Now, that's the leaders. But they actually do have some interesting videos. Now, they don't have a lot of subscribers. Their camp doesn't seem to be very big. But House of David is still around. They've been on YouTube since September 2015. Someone should look into their channel more and find out like what they were saying on here. It's interesting to see who they follow, right? They follow Sakari. Yeah, there you go. Do they use come join us, Passover? Looks like that's their logo there. So they are still around, just so you know. Not very active on that part. They need to fix their playlist there. Looks like they do some street teaching. Huh. I actually didn't really know they were engaged with street teaching. That means you could still have people running in the HODC. Wow. So there's your answer, my friend. Aim to serve, man. All right. Okay. We're almost done with this book. See? Last paragraph. For this Americanist anthropologist, working in contemporary Israel is inextricably linked to my previous research with other Hebrew Israelites, including those with no intentions of ever leaving America. GOCC taught the flea doctrine, though, so they did. It is an Israel molded, at least for me, by the way Brooklyn houses its various Judaisms/Hebrewisms. As an anthropologist who has only relatively recently started including trips to Israel in my ethnographic repertoire, it remains interesting to mark some of the differences between and among the versions of Israel in Africa, Israel as Africa, and he has a journal article on this, conjured and crafted by various interested parties here and there, versions further reconfigured by my own visits to Dimona. Israel is constituted by the many competing tales told of its significance, inhabited and animated by disparate understandings and narrations of sacredness and belonging. The AHIJ are clearly quite purposeful about the ways in which they introduce visitors to the Kfar and to the larger nation state through events such as sacred visitations. And my appreciation of this intriguing and hyper-politicized space is clearly overdetermined by the nuanced and sometimes mutually exclusive framings that my research subjects in the United States and Israel provide their would-be anthropological investigator. So let's look at real quick here at his notes. That is the end of what I wanted to read to you. It was pages 67 through 71. Okay. And then his notes begin on page 74 with note 17. He says, don't be a sucker all your life is pretty close to a verbatim quote, at least in the memory of this event pierced into my subconscious. The rest of the words in quotation marks are what I have always heard him say when I have played back the exchange in my mind through the years. For a discussion of the institutional history of the ICBK in the United States, see James E. Landing, Black Judaism. That's a book where I was reading about the House of Israel, Cincinnati. All right. Looks like there's only one other particular important note, and it says this: it is important to note that the ICUPK do locate all 12 tribes, not just 10, in different parts of the Americas, even Judah and Benjamin, which are linked to African Americans and West Indians respectively. For a discussion of how Israel is reframed as Africa by the AHIJ, see Fran Markowitz, Israel as Africa. Africa is Israel, Divine Geography, and the Personal Narratives and Community Identity of the Black Hebrew Israelites. Wait, did Fran Markowitz write the article? I'm sorry, I thought that was an article by Jackson himself. Because I had that article, but now I forget who the author was. I don't know. I have to see what's up with that. All right, well, I'll put that down for now. Okay. So this is a rare book, one of the books that actually has an academic discussing One Westism. Now, he's doing it in a comparison to AHIJ, but I wanted to read that, bring that to your attention, and that is our book review for October. Unless we didn't do one in September, that'll be our one for September. I'll look it up and see if we did later on, okay? I don't remember right now if we did, but I told you I was going to do a freestyle, so you guys give me a little time to get some of these beats here, and then we can do a little freestyle. Where did I put those beats, ladies and gentlemen? Where did I put those beats I have? Any questions you want to ask me in the live chat? You guys are great on the tip jar tonight. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm also glad that you guys are hanging with me this late, and we even had a divided audience. So I know a lot's going on, but I'm glad you guys stuck with it, and I'm trying to stick with it too. And then the other question is, where are those beats I put? Well, I can't find the dumb beat now. Where did the stupid beat go? This is gonna take a second. I'm scrolling, and because I didn't really have a thing prepared for that, because I didn't really think I was gonna be freestyling this. So don't be hating too much on me on that one, please. Oh my goodness, where is this thing? I might need to divide this up here. Just give me a second. Oh, we're gonna get a beat. Sort by. Well, let's just go over here instead. Oh no, we're not gonna do that. Let's. Yeah. Ooh. Hey, I like that beat. This is a beat by Soko. Got the devil in like a chokehold. Oh no, we rapping again. Vocab alone with the men and women in the live chat. Got the boom back, you know it's jazzy, you know that it's all that. All that, we on a mission. Late night dissing, eating venison, not really. I'm a Christian spitting. Gotta do freestyle, this ain't no written. Beat is smooth, we just can't lose. Vocab alone, serve the king of the Jews. The king of the Jews, Yeshua Mashiach. Got a microphone and begin to rock. On the block, non-stop, 6 o'clock past that. Vocab alone, I got the gray hat. Yes, y'all don't got the greenbacks. Not that much, the beat is tough. Vocab alone, I'm standing up. Hey yo, is the volume loud enough? I don't know, but I got the flow. This is an old school beat by Soko. By Soko, initials JS. You know that it's fresh, thank God that it's deaf. So deaf like Jermaine Dupri. Here we come again, most definitely. Indeed 500 around the track. With this vocab alone, and I'm taking it back on a chair that's black. I kick it back. Yes, y'all, you know I'm on the attack like the devil. That's what they call me. Yes, indeed, and I'm like Wally. Yes, y'all taking out that trash. Burn the mic up, leave it at ash. At the door I dash to make that cash. I'm like Tom Brady, throwing the pass. Who's a beat caught by? You on the fly with this vocab Malone. Got the 4 eyes inside your vision. Thank Jesus Christ, I serve the risen. No division, but multiplication. Soteriology, talk salvation across the nation. Shout out to Haitians, plus the Asians, plus Jamaicans. The mic is blazing like Johnny Blaze. Thank God I'm saved. You know it don't pay, but it's all good. It's not Eric B. Or maybe Rakim, it's little of me. Christian MC with the free style. That word ends in an E. Style by the Nile, but not in Egypt. Check it out now when I rhyme for Jesus. He frees us, he sees us with his spiritual gift. I got to uplift like Darth Vader, choking a fool. Peep this out now, the mic is a tool. Okay, it's cool, tomorrow is school. When I sleep, I just might drool upon my pillow. Some of y'all shorter than Willow. I grab the microphone and I get ill. Oh, we bringing it back. Yes, y'all got the tracks in the backpack. Yes, y'all cut no slack. And we do this, hey yo, run that. Nah, nah, nah. Yeah, about to end this. Gonna go live again later this week with Regenerate We're gonna do a little review of my time at Flavor Fest. You don't want to miss that. He's a Christian MC I met there from Chicago. We're gone.